Hey everybody, welcome back, welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new video. So my name is Mike, I'm a 3D artist, and I'm going to answer your questions. I did a call out on my community tab on my channel, and I said, hey, do you have any questions you want to ask, and I'll see if I can answer them. And you did post a lot of them, right? So I'm not sure whether I'll be able to cover all of them in this one video. Maybe I'll have to do a part 2. But that said, let's see what kind of questions you guys asked and whether I can answer them. Okay, here we go. So question number 1 is almost a half pager to start with. It's a question by, I hope I pronounced it right, Faiz the Emperor. Faiz, yeah. And the first question is, why does Polycount weigh heavier in games, right? Well, the thing is this. If you look at how, for example, movies, let's say 3D animated movies, how they are rendered, right? And then you compare that to a game. In a movie, you render out a scene. So you render frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, and so forth and so on, right? And once it's rendered, you output it as a video, and you got your video. In the case of a game, you don't know what the next frame is going to look like because it's player controlled. You as a player decide to have the character go left, go right, and so forth. So it's real-time rendering. And because it's rendering while you are playing, it's much, much heavier on your system, right? And for that reason, it's important to have lower poly when you're working in games. That's kind of the answer, right? Let's see what else. I'm not going to read this out loud, all of it, because, I want to focus on the questions itself, right? So the next one is, what is tessellation? Well, mathematically speaking, tessellation is a situation where you have a pattern that doesn't have any overlaps and it doesn't have any gaps, right? So it can be used for, let's say, to cover a certain surface. In the situation of a game, for example, the tessellation typically points to subdividing the triangulated mesh, right, to get a higher density, which doesn't necessarily make it better, but it allows for much better displacement maps, right? That may sound a bit complicated, and it is, but it is something that you will see in certain games as an option that you can turn on or off. But it's very important for you as a 3D artist to make sure that your mesh and your model is clean, okay? Alrighty, next question. How much does a 3D artist make? Well, that kind of depends on so many different things. Where are you located? What's your skill set? What type of industry are you working in? And so forth, right? That's kind of like asking how fast does a car go, if you know what I mean, right? If you want to understand what a 3D artist makes, then you have to do your homework. What is the area you want to work in? What type of job are you looking for? How much experience do you have? Try to get in contact with other people in the industry and kind of compare, okay? All right, next question. Let's see. I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to try and pick questions that I think is relevant to all of us, right? Okay, and try to get some questions from other people in as well. All right. Let's see. Okay, question from Mark Robin. I started learning Cinema 4D in February this year. I'm still learning and the process is good. I'm happy with it, but everything is expensive. Software, renderers, plugins, and looking at Blender, it has almost everything for free. So do you think using a paid software is a no-brainer thing to do, while a software with all the features available for free? I tried Blender 2 years ago and didn't get the hang of it. Well, the thing is this, a lot of people use Blender because it's free, right? Now, you could consider though, if it's free, why isn't everybody using it? So there must be reasons, right? I personally don't use Blender. I have used it in the past. I'm definitely a Maya guy, or I would say an Autodesk guy. I use 3ds Max and Maya. Some people will say, well, that's because the big studios use Maya and 3ds Max. That's one reason. I think it's to a point personal preference. It's also, whether it will advance your options if you're working in the industry, right? It's very much a personal choice, and I think you will just have to make that choice and see how that works out for you, okay? Right, then a question by Curly T. Curly says, "Hi Mike, I appreciate a series of what a 3D artist does." All right? Now, I, of course, did many videos. I think I'm at 1,500 videos, something like that. And a 3D artist basically does two major category of activities, right? Depending on whether you work for a studio or if you work freelance. Now, if you work freelance, you have the creative aspect, right? And then you have the business aspect. So finding clients, contracts, invoices, payments, all that stuff, right? In a studio, it's very much depending on what type of studio you're working for and what type of work they want you to do. That said, I did a 10-part series on my channel about how to become a freelance artist. And although that just covers the freelance part, it also covers many aspects of the job. So I think that would be a good idea to check that out, okay? Let's see, what else we got? Okay, I got some questions about can you do a video about. That's not really something I can answer right now. Let's see. Okay, I've seen some 3D models having textures like digital painting. I mean, plain simple colors, but some with glows on the edges. So how can I get that type of texture? Okay, well, first of all, I kind of need to interpret the question because not everybody is a native English speaker, right? What I'm seeing here is, okay, so flat colors with a glow on the edges. Now, that glow can be created by applying an emissive texture. It can be originated by having a base layer color where there's a curvature map baked, many different styles. Without seeing the actual texture, it's kind of hard to say, right? But it sounds like it's definitely a texture and not a material. Okay, so a question, how and where can I get a job as a 3D artist? That's of course impossible to answer, because that depends on so many different factors, yeah? Let's see, and I'm definitely going to try to pronounce his name. Rahul Raj Debnath. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, yeah? How to have a proper high poly to low poly bake. Well, first of all, it's of course important that your low poly is properly meshed out. So spacing is correct. You don't have any non-manifold geometry or any other errors. So a clean mesh. Your high poly, needs to have a similarity to the low poly at a point where it's bakeable. I mean, if my low poly looks like a football and my high poly looks like a truck, the bake is not going to be good, right? There's just so much you can do with a bake. That's what I mean. So if you know, for example, that you're making an axe blade and there's a huge gap in it, then you want to have that gap at least to some extent in the low poly as well, right? And then you have the option to use envelopes. You have all sorts of settings you can play with, kind of depending on what type of software you're using for the bake, right? Okay, let's see. What are the characteristics of a well-presented portfolio or demo reel? Well, I did quite a few portfolio reviews on my channel over the years where I talk about exactly that, right? So I talk about the do's and don'ts, what's important depending on what you want to achieve, okay? Let's see, here's one from Gamer Rocks, but I don't really think this is a question. Texel density for AAA games, FPS weapons. That's more like a question for a tutorial. Okay. Let's see, one that says, you didn't teach us how to make easy facial features with good topology. Well, I'm not a character guy, that's why, right? And I never have been. Where can I find good textures for my model? Well, I think the question should be, where can I find good textures? I mean, for your model, I mean, I don't know what the model is, but there are plenty of websites out there where you can get good free textures and also paid textures, right? Just go online and type in textures, pay texture, free textures, and you'll find tons and tons of websites. Yeah. All right, what's next? What type of models should you practice more to get better in 3D modeling? Well, I don't know, because I don't know what your skill set is, but I do have a comment on this. When people start out modeling in 3D, they have a tendency to model something that they think is easy, right? And then they kind of stay close to that object. So if they know how to model a coffee cup, they will do a mug or maybe something like that, something similar. The thing is, you typically don't want to model something you have no idea how to model because you find it difficult and you don't know how. The problem there is that you're not growing as a 3D artist. So the trick here is to have somebody else tell you what to model, right? Or for example, say, well, I'm going to model something on my desk every day. So the first item to my left or the first item to my right is what I'm going to model, right? That is how you push yourself to grow as a 3D artist, and you understand and learn how to do more complex things. Yeah? Okay, cool. Let's see. Okay, interesting. Question from Johannes Bergström. Yeah? Which payment models are best when going into freelance? Hourly, paid, decided sum when finished, etc. Okay. And again, I did a 10-part video series on this, right? Where I talked about, how to calculate the amount of money you need to charge for your work, how to get to the right profit level, how to do all of that. Yeah? Okay, let's see how we're doing, guys. We'll do a few more. And I think, like I said, we'll have to do a multiple-part video series on this. But I really like the idea, and I hope you guys too. Yeah? Let's see here. How to understand a reference image to create photorealistic 3D models. Well, this is kind of a two-part question. It's by Pravika Dasa, yeah? And how to understand reference image. Well, first of all, try to get a kind of orthographic view, like a top view, side view, and so forth. Maybe a blueprint. But also it's very important to have photo information, right? From different angles, different light sources, and so forth. For me personally, because I do a lot of prop modeling, I always want to understand how something is constructed. So if I get a toy car and I want to model it, how is that put together, right? Is there an axle? How are the wheels attached? That kind of thing. And that's where I go from. And once you understand how it's constructed, it's much easier to understand how to model it in individual components. Okay? Let's see. Let's go with the next one. Question from Devang Nagar. And again, guys, if I'm butchering your names, I do apologize, yeah? Is there a way to speed up rendering or my Viewport? I assume on my Viewport. Okay. So the Maya Viewport is, it's technically a rendering, but it's not the rendering you use as your output, right? So if you want to see an update in your viewport while you're working, there are a couple of things you can do. You can change the resolution of your viewport, right? You can turn off shading, you can turn off ambient occlusion, you can do things like that. You can also make sure that you are not running other applications in the background that are slowing down your system, like your agenda or your Adobe updater or whatever, right? And that should help a lot. Okay, we'll do one more, guys. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, we'll do one more question and then we'll do the rest for the next one. And I got tons and tons more questions. And please let me know in the comments whether you like this kind of video, okay? So this is a 6 or 7 part question by Joel Joseph, right? And hopefully I can understand it and answer them. First one, are there any workflows to be learned before starting working for studios? Yes, of course. I don't know what your skill set is. I don't know whether you understand the workflow in general when it comes to, setting up a model. So the modeling and UVing and baking and all that. That said, every studio is different. If you got a studio with 3 employees, basically everybody's doing everything. If you got a studio with 200 employees, then you might have a lot of specialists there. General workflows, though, are, you can find these in tutorials where they typically say full workflow, and I have several on my channel, right? Once you've done a bunch of these, you see the different types of workflow, and you should be good for the most part. Yeah. Of course, like I said, depending on the studio, depending where it is and what type of work they're doing, it might be different. Okay. How to understand and work with proportion and scale. Now, I'm so happy that you're asking this, because that's where a lot of people go wrong. Basically, the answer is, first of all, do your homework, right? Information on scale and proportion can be found almost anywhere. If you want to know the height of a lamppost, right, or the size of a door, this information can be found online, right? Now, that's a start. Then second, when you are actually modeling something, use a reference inside your scene. For example, take a cube and create a cube at 6 feet height, which is kind of the average height of a person, right? So you can immediately see, oh, the door is way too high or it's too wide and so forth. So that's important to do, yeah? Next one, how to set up Workspace at home, position, lighting, components, and other requirements. Excuse me. Well, again, that depends on your budget, on the space you have, on what you're working on, and so forth. For me personally, it's important to have 2 screens, and then I have a pen display. Lighting is obviously pretty important because you're going to be sitting behind your system for a long time every day, and you don't want to strain your eyes. You don't want to create a situation where your neck starts to hurt and your back and so forth. So take regular breaks as well. Yeah. Let's see, components, other requirements. That's a little bit too much to get into, right? Let's see, how to help and learn with others. Become part of a community, right? Become a member of, for example, a Facebook community where you have other 3D artists. Now, unfortunately, on platforms like Facebook, you have the super negative groups where people are kind of, bad-mouthing each other and that kind of thing. But there are groups out there where they're very professional and they give you proper feedback and they help you to grow as an artist, and you can do the same, yeah? I got one of those groups myself. I got well over 4,000 members in it. It's the MH Tutorials Hangout and Chat group. So you can find that on Facebook, and you're welcome to join, okay? Alrighty, a few more. How to improve 3D modeling texturing. Is there anything to always keep in mind when doing these stuffs? Okay, cool. Yes, when you're texturing, you need to make sure that your mesh is properly set up. So the low poly mesh, yeah? When you start to texture, and I assume you're talking about applying 2D textures here, not PBR painting or anything like that, yeah? If the scale of your UV shells is off, if they're distorted and so forth, then your texture will look bad. So the key to set up a texture in a way that it looks good is to get your UVs proper, yeah? Let's see, what's the process for learning or doing 3D modeling and texturing? Practice, 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 practice. And like I said, you start simple, but you go from there. My advice would be, don't compete with other people, compete with yourself. The goal here is for you to grow as a 3D artist. If your goal is to be the best 3D artist in the world, hey, there's only one, right? So that wouldn't make sense. But try to grow your own knowledge and your own skill. I think that's the key here. And have a plan, make a schedule. I want to be at this level a month from now or 2 months from now. I want to learn this topic in 1 month from now, and so forth. Yeah? Okay, how to approach other 3D artists for help. Send them an email. Explain who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what type of help you are looking for. And chances are they might say, hey, I'll help you. Yeah? Okay, exercises for staying motivated. I literally did a video about that, and this kind of ties into the next one as well. How to overcome burnouts. Now, I wouldn't throw that term around that easily unless you actually have a burnout. A burnout is a super serious condition. But I kind of assume you're talking about, you're not feeling it, that kind of thing. I recently did a video literally about this, right? How to not freak out, how to not get stressed out, how to stay calm and move forward, right? It's on my channel. I think I called it something like how to not lose it, all right? So yeah, let's see, we're 20 minutes in. I think that's good for a first video. I will be doing a part 2 on Wednesday. That is, if you guys want me to, right? I got a whole lot more questions going on here. So next Wednesday, if you guys comment below on this video that you want a part 2, I will definitely do a part 2, okay? Thank you guys for hanging out in this video. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you guys Wednesday. Bye.